Celtic Stuff Live.
Welcome to Celtic Stuff Live on the CLNS Media Network, the leading online provider of audio and video coverage for your Boston Celtics. I'm your host, Justin Poulin. With me is John Duke. It's been 2 weeks. We hope you enjoyed your holiday season. I know I enjoyed mine a lot more at the end as a Celtics fan than at the beginning. I told you, John, when we last left that I thought this team was ready for a little bit of a skid, and they did hit some bumps in the road, but I think they recovered nicely, as evidenced by two games I know we want to talk about on the show today, the Rockets game, and then last night's victory over the Cleveland Cavaliers, which I will say I'm actually disappointed that Isaiah Thomas didn't play, even though I know that that may have changed the complexion of the game for the Celtics and maybe the outcome. They definitely left the door open for Cleveland, but the Cavs were obviously tired on the second night of a back-to-back, having maybe a skid of their own, except coming out of instead of heading into the holidays like the Celtics, and they didn't take advantage, and the Celtics walking away, actually blowout, able to put guys like Nader out on the court to close out that game. What a change when you consider that first night of the season when Hayward went down. That's the last time we faced the Cavs. You would not have expected a blowout in the rematch.
No, I mean, well, I think you're right. You take the schedule pieces out of the puzzle. This was a night when, I mean, if you to even add to that the shooting that Kyrie put up, 5 for 14, I mean, not even in the top four as Celtic scorers, you would think, oh, maybe this turns the other way. This is a blowout going for Cleveland's end. But, Cleveland looks old, slow. They looked, a step late to the ball. They really missed Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah, and
That's
Kevin Love was miserable.
Oh man,
miserable. I know he tweaked the ankle or whatever it was there, and so I'm sure that had an impact. And we've obviously seen our team go through their share of tweaks over the years. Remember Jay Crowder, just how difficult that was with that first high ankle sprain, and things like that happen. And this is kind of that stretch. If you remember the last couple of years, the Celtics struggling around the new year. I don't think it's an uncommon scenario. Hell, look at the Houston Rockets, who we just beat. They were on a 5-game skid at that time. I don't know how that ended up. I didn't check, I don't have show notes here on that, but that was the best record in the NBA. Now Harden's out with some injuries, and you're looking at a club who's skidded heading into his injury. So things change very quickly in the NBA. You're right, though. Cavs looked a little old, looked a little slow, and Celtics capitalized. Maybe a little bit of a coming out party for Tatum, don't you think?
I'll tell
on
you.
National TV, anyway, it was.
On that, yeah. I mean, he is just that third quarter run that he went on. Those are the types of things where there was some good chat back and forth today. Danger Cart was kind of talking on Twitter about this, about what's the upside of this Celtics team? Where are they going to go? In not just this season, but in this next 3-4 years, what are they? And I think that the one thing that kind of came out of that, which is, look, you've got guys like Tatum and you got Brown. You've got a potentially another Laker pick, which could be as high as number 2 in this year's draft, which should get you a pretty good player.
You're loving yourself another Duke player this year.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say no to all the Duke players, but
I caught that game, 32 points, 21 rebounds. I actually watched that from start to finish. It was the first college b-ball game I took in this season, but I'm making it a point to look at more, watch more, not just because of the picks this year, but just in general. The draft is more fun the more you're able to watch. Trae Young is a player I haven't had a chance to see yet, and I haven't watched Ayton play yet, but Bamba, there's another guy. So
Yep.
we're getting close. I know,
Bamba.
I know this show is not the show, but I want loyal listeners and fans of Celtic Stuff Live to know that we are heading into that season where you and I start picking our little sleepers and having our favorites. And then by the time we get to March Madness, you've got your draft watch and draft picks ready to go for everybody.
It's crazy. And, there's so many bigs. I mean, obviously, you look at the Celtics roster and at night, like, against Cleveland, when you're throwing all these wings, I mean, it's amazing to have health on the wing like the Celtics have now. And you just look at them switch, athletic, long guys who can, defend just about anybody that Cleveland's going to throw at you. It's just, it really makes it hard for an offense to attack that. And so now you look at this draft coming up with guys like Ayton, Bagley, Porter, Bamba, and that's, 6 right there, not even count Doncic and Trae Young.
Yeah,
if
that pick
in
gets
that
conveyed,
2 through 5,
absolutely.
If they get that Laker pick to convey, you're going to get a decent player. And that's all you can ask for. And
remember last year when we were talking about whether Tatum would be a good consolation prize if they didn't get the number 1 overall pick, and then they do get it, and they wind up getting a player who on the national stage has a great game and really, for most intents and purposes, doesn't even look like a rookie out there. There are moments, he didn't finish every play. He got a little aggressive when he should have laid one in and tried to dunk it, but I suppose where the game was at that point, it's an acceptable risk. But at the same time, he's playing defense. We weren't sure about defense. The 3-point shot was a question mark. He's still halfway through the season leading the league in 3-point percentage. The Celtics are 31-10. They're on pace to win 62 games, and it's been as rigorous as it's going to get. I mean, sure, they've got to travel overseas. They have to deal with that. But I think they'll weather that storm just fine. And when they come back, hopefully they're looking to get healthy, add Hayward, and that's kind of the big picture. But also let's talk about what you just said, the wings, the players. Now it's time to talk about Terry Rozier. He's been on a hot streak straight through all of this. Even during the skid, kid was knocking down 3-pointers. They asked him after the game, hey, I think it was Doris Burke was asking him on ESPN, what's the big difference for your contributions? He said confidence. I knew once I got my confidence going, I was going to be great. And he really has gotten his confidence. And I'm still not sure he's the guy I want running the offense and setting it up. But he's Vinny the microwave, and we've said that years ago. You and I talked about his potential to be that guy, but he really is. He can be instant offense, and they've needed that for a long time in that second unit.
And you look at what this team needs right now. They need guys who can fill in, who can make buckets. I think they've got a deep bench of guys who can defend. I mean, we've seen Larkin do it. We've seen seen them do it. Certainly Brown isn't a plus offensive player, but he's got the defensive end. Shemi Ojale, Baines, they've got the defensive end on that bench down pretty good. They lack those scorers. But if Rozier makes that leap, and I'm going to put Smart into a different category right now, but if Rozier makes that leap where he becomes that Vinnie Johnson type guy, maybe not quite at that level at this point early in his career, but that's what they need, and so that kind of end of the third where they were kind of searching for buckets, shots weren't really falling for them. Start of the fourth quarter against Cleveland, Rozier comes in, hits a couple big shots, and any chance of that game, which felt a little bit soft there, felt like it could fall back to Cleveland maybe if things got going. Rozier shut that door, started the fourth quarter, and those are the type of areas, that kind of bench area that you and I talked about so much before the season. What's going to happen? How are they going to get Hayward involved? Is he going to be the bridge there that's going to allow this whole thing to flow? Without Hayward, we've had some rough spots, but Rozier, as you said, has really filled the gap there, particularly offensively, scoring the ball. And maybe they don't need the prototypical playmaker for Rozier to be that guy, because if you have Hayward in that role, you can have a guy like Rozier who can defend and play play defend those point guards in such a way, but then on the other end, he's scoring for you. He's
and
able to get those
rebounding.
threes. That's what you need. Absolutely.
And rebounding. I mean, he contributes in a lot of different ways, just as Marcus Smart does. And I guess we'll wrap up sort of this wing discussion that you're bringing up. But Marcus Smart got some love from Brad Stevens before the game. And again, I'm going to go back to the ESPN announcers because that's what I had to watch. I'm sure you listened to Mike and Tommy, but
Absolutely.
they were talking intensely about Marcus Smart and really propping him up. Now, Marcus obviously came out on this big stage, knocked down some big time 3-pointers, and offensively looked better than he does on any usual night, so to speak. This was one of his better nights, especially at the beginning of the game, offensively. But I think he's starting to get some respect around the league. We know his contract is coming up, but here's a guy who I don't know if you saw it after the game, and maybe we'll finish the Marcus Smart thought and then we'll talk about Isaiah Thomas. But after the game, I don't know if you saw his hug that he gave Isaiah Thomas, but there was a couple of plays during that fourth quarter, I think, or maybe it was the third quarter, where I think he was channeling his inner IT, and he needs to do that more.
Well, I think we talked in our last show, which is now over 2 weeks ago at this point. We talked about there was some real concerns about Smart's shooting. He just wasn't finding the range at all. And I think over that time we saw, Christmas Day against the Wizards as well. What he's done really over that time is he's really looking to score more effectively in the paint. Using, I think in the early part of this year, people are looking for him to set that pick and roll situation and find that little pocket pass or find a way to kind of dip it in there to guys like Tice or Baines or what have you. But now I think he's getting in there and he's finding some room to get his shot off. But it's a close shot. It's 15, 12 feet. Sometimes he's finishing at the rim. And I think that's just opening up his game quite a bit. Today he hit the three. He kind of gone cold a little bit from distance. But I think if he's able to get those shots in the paint through basically setting up through his passing, I think it opens up a whole new world for him. Is he IT? I think he's putting on a show. I think the guys like Smart and guys like Rozier and Brown and Horford really wanted this one, less so about the whole IT thing than really just to send a message to Cleveland. Hey, you guys punked us last year in the playoffs. We're ready for you now.
Yeah, and they've matured a ton. And I think there is a little bit of the Isaiah Thomas factor in there just because I think he was their heart and soul. I mean, the players you just named are all of the same players who remember Isaiah Thomas over the last 2 seasons. Obviously Jaylen Brown up until this season grew up with IT on this club. And so that's kind of, I think, a big factor there. Obviously Smart was here before Isaiah, but not for long. And they built that culture together. And that's when things really started to turn around. So I think there's a lot of respect for him there. Let's talk more about Isaiah Thomas in just a second, but first a reminder, you can follow Celtic Stuff Live on Twitter at CSL_tweet live. You can follow me at CSL_Justin. John is at CSL_Duke. The entire CLNS Media Network is at CLNS Media. Facebook page, facebook.com/CLNS fans. Download the CLNS Media app for iOS and Android. You will find us there as well as the Roundtable and Celtics Beat. And we'll just give a little shout to Larry H. Russell and say, good run, my friend. Good run. Last episode was Sunday. Make sure you check that out with Nick Gelso and Larry H. Russell saying goodbye. But Larry being a good friend of the show, always propping us up. And as a matter of fact, we've said it before on the show, but after our long hiatus, Larry was the one who kind of pulled us back into the fold, asking us if we would do. Actually, I want to say it's almost exactly a year ago. It was early January. Wanted us to cover a show for him so he could take the New Year's Day off or whatnot, and we interviewed Mark Spears, which was a great return, and I think that pulled us back into the fray. And then finally, CLNS Radio's YouTube channel, youtube.com/CLNS Media for high-definition, full-length locker room interviews, and the Garden Report with CLNS founder Nick Gelso and others like Josue Pavone and our good friend, it's been a little while since we talked to him, but Jimmy Toscano. So John, let's talk about IT and this whole return. It's, again, unfortunate we didn't get to see him play in the game, and I know he had a nice first game back the other night. Was it 16 points in a short few minutes, 17 minutes or something? So he's going to give that team a lift. But, dude, just seeing his face back in the Garden, forget the applause, forget all of that. Just seeing his face again, I do miss him. There's just something about that guy.
Well, IT, right? I mean,
the smile.
It's
the smile,
right.
Dude. He just loves the game.
You know, and that's, well, all right. I don't know if we want to go there with this, but I'm just, there's been a lot of short memories, I think, over the last 24, 48 hours, especially, about what that guy did here, what that guy did for the Celtics, what that guy did for the franchise. That's unfortunate.
It's way too soon for that nonsense.
You know, like I understand, wanting to, back the new guy, back the guy who's on the team now. But this isn't about Kyrie. I mean, Kyrie was throwing, love towards IT yesterday. Kind of saying, this guy, he gave his heart and soul. He said all the right things, and there are people out there that are just like, what did he ever do? I mean, come on. I mean, even if you step apart from the emotional things that he went through, the personal loss, the injuries, all that, even if you ignore all that, there's a lot of love right now that goes to the 2002 Celtics. Okay. I heard it the other day. Oh, Antoine. Yeah. I love those teams when Antoine was on there and da-da-da-da. Okay. Well, let's take a step back. What exactly has IT done, or what has Antoine Walker done that IT hadn't? I mean, the fact is, IT did more in 2 years than Antoine Walker did here in 7. Okay? IT was a better player here than Antoine Walker ever was as a Boston Celtic. And yet we still got people
one of the most heroic, heroic. Well, it was a heroic season. Actually.
Heroic. Yeah.
I was about to say historic, but it probably heroic comes before historic. It was one of the most heroic and historic performances that any Celtic has ever put out on the floor. And the dude's not even 5'9". He's 5'6".
Right.
And he was closing games. Then his sister, everything else, nothing but mad respect for him. And there were moments where it's like, you're letting it drag on a little bit, but I can understand why he was hurt. But and he's already seeming like that he's healed. I think it just helps being back on the floor for him. It's hard to go through, I think, those emotions when you know you can't play. And now that he's back and that love of the game is coming out, I think that hatchet gets buried nice and easily from this point forward. But that mutual respect has to be there because he did. He had an amazing year, and he did give this franchise and this city everything. And do you remember, I think it was him. He's driving home with his wife. I don't know where they were, out to dinner or whatever, and he just stops at a playground, gets out and goes, he didn't do like that dunk challenge or drive-by dunking or whatever. Like, he got out and he played ball with some kid who was shooting by himself at a park. Like, that's, guys, just remember that one thing about that man. Remember that one thing about that man, and that's all you need to know.
Well, and Paul Pierce, and we love Paul Pierce, and what Paul Pierce did for his time here, 1998 to 2013. Look, I mean, he's one of the great Celtics ever. Okay. Paul Pierce was never higher than 7th in MVP voting. IT was 5th in a league full of great players, truly outstanding players. He's 5th in a year when the winner averages to triple-double. The second place guy just misses that fact. You got LeBron James, who's maybe one of the top 5 players ever to play the game. I mean, how can you say he hasn't done anything here? Now, does he deserve to have his jersey retired? No, I don't believe he does. Is he
I would agree with that.
10 great player? No.
Nope. not the tenure factor, but not his fault, which is why you
But
give him lots of respect for the
right,
years he
you
did have.
give him respect for what he has done. Give him respect for the fact that he gave his heart and soul to the Boston Celtics, which is what fans ask of players all the time. And all the time we get disappointed by what we get. We don't always get what we want. We don't get the guy who plays with his heart. They play for his pocketbook, or they play for other things. This guy played for his heart. He was what Celtics fans want their star to be. They also want him to be 6'7", and and unfortunately, IT didn't have those things. But you can still respect what he had, respect what he did, and be okay. Look, and that period's over. But there's been a lot of denigration.
It's not out of the question that he might come back.
It's so absurd and so wrong.
Yeah,
good. You're right.
Not this year. Unlikely this year. He's going to go get paid. But he's still a young man at the age of 28. And that next contract, who knows how long it'll be, 4 or 5 years. But you could see him come back a little bit later on to be a spark off the bench, especially when this team is beginning to age and maybe they're trying to sign those players and they have a lot less to play with financially. Come back and let him have a run. And Danny's never been shy of doing those types of things. So
he reacquired Antoine.
Even Antoine.
Technology back. Yeah. And again, IT is a better player than Antoine Walker ever was. It's a short period of time. And, there is two different things. There's the issue of, should he have, I think he has the right to say to the Celtics, look, guys, I don't want to do any sort of video tribute. I want my family there. I want them to appreciate that. I think he has the right to say that. I don't think that has any impact on what happens to Paul Pierce's night. I don't think backing up from that, there's a reason why they made Paul Pierce's celebration after a game. They're not even doing it at halftime like they usually do. So the Celtics have already kind of said, look, this is a separate thing. This is above and beyond, and we're tacking it on after a game. Yes, it's a Cleveland game. Yes, it's going to be highly charged. Yes, it's going to have LeBron there and all that goes with it.
I was just going to say, you know what else? LeBron's probably going to that party afterwards. He's probably invited. Absolutely.
No question.
Yep.
No question. And that's okay, but I'm really kind of aggravated with the way that people have gone after a guy, either personally or gone after what he did here. Because, they didn't win the championship, but there's been a lot of great Celtics seasons. They haven't won a championship, and we celebrate them now. And if anyone who's a fan of the last 30 years, there's a lot of Celtics teams you loved that weren't the 2008 team. So, 91, 92, 2002, those were all years that, even 95, you could argue. Those were years where the Celtics kind of made something of themselves. And they weren't championship teams, but they had a certain spunk to them, a certain fire to them that connected with the fans. And IT was the brightest of all those stars. But unfortunately, he's here, he's gone, and now we have this situation. It's just unfortunate that this is all getting mixed up in some other stuff that I think people are really taking it personal, as if the fans are owed this video celebration. Folks, if you want to see a video of IT, go to youtube.com/CLNS media or CLNS radio, and you can look up a whole bunch of IT quotes, IT videos, all kinds of stuff. Don't waste your time waiting for some in-arena thing that is terrible in the video quality when you look at it. It's stupid. What do we care about this for? It's nuts.
We don't. I'm ready to move on.
Let's do it.
Quite honestly. But listen up, Hoops fans. Basketball season is back, and now that your favorite hardwood heroes, we say it's back, but the Celtics season's halfway through. They've returned to action. It's time for you to put your fantasy knowledge to the test to win huge cash prizes every night playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings.com. At DraftKings, there are so many ways to play. Choose from public contests with huge cash prizes or private contests where you can compete against your friends. They've even even got beginner and casual contests where you'll play against people of similar skill level. The best part, you get to draft a new team each day, and drafting a team is arguably the best part of fantasy. The only thing better, winning some cash doing it. Just ask Dan from St. Louis or Jeremy from Austin. They both turned a $3 entry into $1,000. Huge cash prizes and bragging rights await only at DraftKings. Use the code CLNS at DraftKings.com. That'll be free with your first deposit for a share in $10,000 in total prizes. That's tonight. Don't wait. Use code CLNS at DraftKings.com now to choose your lineup. And you can seriously cash in. That's code CLNS only at DraftKings.com. The game inside the game. A minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. All right, John, so we want to move on. I know one thing you want to make sure we squeeze in before we maybe predict the next week instead of the next month like we have since our last show. But before we get into our predictions, let's talk about that Houston game. Because honestly, Harden's push-off, it was a weird way to end a game. I won't say it's the commonly officiated way to end a game. It was ironic that it was going the Celtics' way, the way that the game was officiated from the beginning. Only 2 refs were suited up. They were missing a third who was, I believe, sick, probably sitting in the hotel with the flu. Everybody seems to have had the flu over the holiday season this year. Just about everybody I know has been through some sort of a bug. But at the end of the day, 2's not enough, and it's a great example of how momentum and energy and effort can sway how the calls go. Having said all that, Harden had it coming, and I remember Gordon basically headbutting, was it Jalen? No, it was Marcus Smart or Marcus, basically headbutting him on the way down the court. So certainly they had some calls coming their way, but not the best officiated game no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, well, I think that this was, as you said, I think the referees played a large role in it, not just the end of the game, but throughout. I mean, from the opening minutes, this was a game that was poorly officiated, both sides. There was so much that they missed, so much that they called that wasn't there. Even at the start of the game, I think it was 4-0, and there was a drive to the hoop that, I'm trying to remember who was it. I think might have been Marcus. He took it to the hole and just got obliterated. No call, goes back the other way, ticky-tack foul, they go to the line. It was a game of 2 halves in terms of officiating, and the officials probably went with the way that the momentum was carrying them, and you could see it. You could clearly see that was happening. But you got to tip your cap to Marcus Smart, because Marcus, in that second unit kind of turned the energy around in that third quarter, and they just never gave up. They never gave up that night. The scoring, I mean, Kyrie was just another planet. Tatum, it was a great game to be at. It was great to get to meet Tommy. I'd never had a chance to meet Tommy before.
I saw that on Facebook, your picture with Tommy. I was like, that's pretty wild because, even when you're in that media room, people kind of respect Tommy's privacy. Everybody kind of knows, don't be climbing all over Tommy or even, just trying to get his thoughts and insights. He sits with, Gorman quite a bit, and, you see some of the old crew coming in or, maybe some of the Celtics staff, CSN people. But for the most part, I think everybody's done a really nice job of giving Tommy a space and, not being that way. So it is funny that you've been in the room with him so many times, covering the games, but then not having had a chance to meet him. But it looked like your boys had a blast, dude.
Oh man. Yeah. So my youngest, last time he went, he was like 2. And so he didn't really remember it. Right? So we this was a big gift, to be able to go down there. And, we had a great time. I mean, my oldest and I were going nuts, and the youngest was a little late. It was an 8:00 game. But we were the loudest in our section, and, awfully proud of that. I got to introduce Tony Brothers to a whole host of kids who were sitting around us, let them know what I thought of his job. But no, it was a tremendous time. Hope to get to catch up with some of the CLNS guys there, but Nick was out of town, and so Jimmy was there. But I didn't
I'm
get a chance
going.
to
I'm
down,
going
so.
to the game against Portland with my son. His first game on Super Bowl
Nice.
Sunday. So
Ooh, very cool. That'll be fun. That'll be a good time.
Be interesting. So the debate is right now: do I fly my two daughters up because we've got 4 tickets? So it's either like my mom and dad who live in Maine are going to go with my son and I, or I can fly the girls up. And then I don't know if we'll just drive back from Boston at that point to Pennsylvania or what we'll do. But so we're trying to work out the logistics right now, but definitely be there. And, you know, I've got to make sure I reach out to Mike and make sure I make the little VIP introduction, let Riley meet Mike in person.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance even though it was a TNT game, I didn't get a chance to talk to Mike. He was ensconced with some pretty deep discussion there. So maybe next time on our next trip. But
deep discussion. Who was he talking to?
I'm trying to remember who it was. Was it might have been Austin. Might have been talking to Austin Age. I can't remember. There was a couple of them lined up on the bench there that weren't just hanging out. But look, I mean, what's great about the games now is that, like, my wife went and she played ball and she knows the game, but she's not insane like you and I are, of course. And she went, great time. I mean, everybody has a great time, and so
it didn't look like it was going to be that way in the first half, though. I felt so bad for you, dude. I almost turned the set off and went to bed. You know that. And my son's with it, and he's like, shut up, Dad. Shut up. They're coming back. I'm telling you right now. I'm calling it. We get halfway through the fourth quarter, and he's basically parading around the living room. Called it.
So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, then, is what you're saying.
No, not at all. Not at all. He's totally a mini-me.
Yep, see, I told you. That was what was going to happen. That's great. And when you saw that happen, it's just, you thought, well, the Celtics, they always come back. Weird stuff happens. But, I mean, like still, it's like, it's 26. It felt like the Super Bowl, honestly. It's like, okay.
It was not just 26. It was 26 against the team with the best record in the NBA.
Absolutely. Who were hitting everything in the first half. I mean, they couldn't miss a damn thing. And Marcus Morris looked like he should have been taken out and gotten the old Yeller treatment at halftime. He was horrendous.
But that was his first game back, right? Effective. He came back and then he was gone again. But yeah, no, he was rusty.
He was terrible. He sucked. He was awful. But he didn't suck in the second half because he made Ryan Anderson look like a piece of trash. I mean, honestly, it was amazing. It was such a great game. It was a great time, great comeback. And, now you look at that in the prism of the Cavs win. They beat the Warriors, they beat the Cavs, they beat the Rockets, and I mean, what else can you ask for at this point? You're halfway through the season, you're 31-10. You could not have scripted this. If they had Gordon Hayward through all this and they were 31-10, I'd be surprised. That's how unbelievable this start has been. And now, once they get through this weekend, they have a week and a half off almost with no games. And they're going to be able to get in the lab, get some practice time.
They basically haven't practiced. I was just going to say, they basically haven't even had a chance to practice, and they're doing this. And as you said, most people didn't even predict that they'd get 60 wins with Hayward. They're overperforming with some major curveballs along the way, not just injuries, but schedule. But do you think, now, I'm going to throw this out there with that whole break in the schedule that you just mentioned, and practice will definitely be good, but we've seen these Brad Stevens teams be better on the second night of back-to-back. Sometimes I wonder if this chemistry and, work ethic and the grinding that they do it's almost a benefit to play lots of games. I know the injury factor is not, and it'll come out in the wash in the second half of the season with a more modest pace. But you get what I'm saying. Like, sometimes that's broken their stride when they get this time off.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to take what's happened in the last month or 2 months and kind of put that aside, because I think that hasn't been good, on a prolonged basis. I think you're right. And there's a mentality that Brad Stevens teams have. When it's toughest, we're at our best. We don't use the second half of back-to-back as an excuse. It's a game just like the first half is. So they are mentally tougher in that regard. But I think over that stretch that we've talked about, this November, December slog they've been on, that's a different category. But I think that the more they're going to be on a schedule that's more the normal rest, which is really what they should have been doing all along. And I think that there's a possibility, you're right, that it could go the other way. But with so many rookies, so many players not understanding what they're doing, almost no practice time to speak of this season, I think it's far ahead as a plus for this team as they move into 2018. They move towards the playoffs, and obviously maybe even they're integrating a new player at the trade deadline, and maybe reintegrating their max free agent that they signed.
You really think they'll bring somebody in? I mean, I know we're getting a little bit ahead of it, but it's January. Typically what we say is January is okay to start discussing trades. And the draft kind of kicks in right after the trade deadline. I know it's earlier this season, right?
Yeah, it's 2-3 weeks earlier, so you have to start talking about that now. I mean, the trade deadline. Do you really
think they'll bring somebody in? You said definite, so if you're saying definite,
I think
who goes?
Well, they have the DPE, so
you think it's picks and fringe player like Nader or something like that?
Scal was on with Chris Mannix on his podcast, and he said that he thought that the Celtics were looking for somebody with that $8 million DPE. And then you can also give someone 125% raise the next year. So let's say someone's making $18 million, they opt out, they get that money. You sign them for 8, and then you give them 10 next year. Well, that's like you got, far more than the 8 million initial investment. So, somebody who's maybe worth a lot more, their bargain is, well, look, you're already getting the 18, and then you're going to get 18 next year. It's like 2 years at 18 million. So it's not a bad deal. So you guys got guys like Greg Monroe, Tyreek Evans, I don't see Lou Williams being cut, but certainly Monroe and Reek would be two guys that I think could fall into that category, and that they could fit for that type of scenario. I would feel like Memphis was going to want something.
Don't you basically lose Marcus Smart financially in that scenario, though? And if you use it, how much money do we really have to try to get somebody like Marcus Smart to come back? I understand we don't want to just throw it away. We've got it, and we can use it and still get Hayward. So that's the hilarious part of it.
Okay, on the one hand, it's a 1-year deal, right? So using DPE doesn't impact Marcus Smart's, the re-signing of Marcus Smart at all. Re-signing this player, okay, well then that's a different scenario. Then sure. You're in a situation where that $10 million could cause an issue, but in a tax sense, not so much in a re-signing Smart sense, because obviously we have bird rights on him. So the question is really, is there another team that's going to max him out this summer? I don't think there is. I mean, even with his improved play, I feel like Smart's not going to get that offer. He's going to play for another year, and then we'll see. And I think that's the best of all worlds. Just because his shooting isn't where it needs to be for him to really, make some
No, he can't get that. He can't get that max deal, that's for sure.
No.
And serious money. I can't remember where I put him, but I think I put him at like 13 or 14 million, and some people told me I was crazy, but I think that's probably where he's going to land.
If Roberson is getting, or Andre Roberson, whatever his name is, if he's getting, I think it's 10 or 12, then I think that's Smart's a little bit north of that, but not considerably so. Yeah.
All right. So you think Smart's going to be able to come back, is what you're thinking?
As a restricted, RFA guy, I think he'll come back. And
essentially, you don't think he'll get enough that the Celtics wouldn't match.
Right. Right. His agent isn't going to find that deal out there because there's a lot of guys who are free agents this summer who I think will attract enough attention that if you're going to spend the money, that's the guy you're going to go for, not Marcus. So yeah, and adding the defense, the DPE. Now maybe that means you don't use the MLE, or maybe you split the MLE this summer, because that's the thing with this bench is we're kind of looking way ahead here, looking to 19. I mean, they're at a point where you've got all these rookies. Are you going to, if you
guys
think
got to get signed, they're all going to come up.
Guys got to get signed, and would it be nicer to have some vets on the bench that kind of know the game and know where they're going? I mean, maybe you don't want to send out a guy like Ojale, but Nader, I hate to see Larkin go, but there's going to be some attrition there. Baines is on a 1-year deal. He's not going to re-sign for the money that he signed back for. So I think we got to think about how they could do this, where they're going to go with it. But I think they're going to try to add that player. It makes a lot of sense for me what Scal was saying. And so if they do, then that's one more piece of the puzzle. Maybe they are closer to contending this year than we think. And I originally thought, and I think that could be the case.
All right. So as we're coming to the end of the show, we're going to talk about the 2 games we have until they head across the pond, as they say. So Minnesota, new look Minnesota, Chris Dunn's Minnesota.
Not anymore. Jimmy Butler's Minnesota.
No, that's right. Jimmy Butler's. That's right. Chris Dunn's in Chicago. And now he's kind of coming on. That's why I was laughing, because I was thinking about how
he is, yeah.
Because I was like, no, we don't want him. And I was like, no. And then it really looked that way with Brown, but now he's coming on. But anyway, Jimmy Butler's Minnesota. So we have that, and we have another matchup against the Nets already again. A team that pick is climbing, unfortunate for the Cavs, and the Lakers pick slotting nicely for us. It's really, we talked about that though when the trade was made. It's like, hey, you know what, that Lakers pick might actually be more valuable. So here we are, and it's definitely starting to look that way. They put together a coach and got some pieces and some players that, help them stem the tides. And so are they still bad? Yeah, they're still bad, but they're not horrible. But I'm thinking 2 wins, or do you think Minnesota steals one?
No, 2-0. Celtics are feeling good about themselves right now. They see the light at the end of the tunnel. They see that they're going to have some time in their future. They're going to London. 2-0.
I don't mean to go early. Do you think it's a letdown game in London? The jet lag and
yes, I think that's very possible.
I do too.
I think it's very possible. It's weird.
Do you think those guys all hang out? Like Embiid and Fultz and Brown. Do you think those guys, like, with all that time over there or whatever, wind up doing
the 2
stuff
teams
together?
You mean like the 2 teams together, or
maybe
you mean
not necessarily like the 2 teams like coming together for it, but like maybe some of these younger players, they're up and comers, the Ben Simmons and the Embiid and Smart and Jaylen Brown and Tatum. Do you think any of these guys wind up intermingling a little bit while they're in London?
I think there's some relationships there. I think Embiid, Simmons. I think there's some of that. I think the NBA will put that upon them. But I think this is going to be really good for team chemistry, team bonding. And we saw what happened with the Rome trip in 2008. The Celtics have made it through the worst part of their schedule unscathed, and maybe better. Now, can they build that type of chemistry and really more importantly, practice time to get these players to where they're ready to play, not just through the rest of their 41 games of the schedule, but really talking about April, May, and June.
Well,
and that's really the challenge is to get the work now to be ready for that.
All right, so that basically tees up next week's show for sure, because it's all we'll have on the docket to talk about. Will be that trip. So everybody stay tuned. We'll be back in not so many days because obviously this is a late release, but this broadcast will be available on demand on the CLNS Media mobile app. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at CSL_Justin and at CSL_Duke. A heartfelt thank you to everybody for tuning in. Remember that you can support the show by subscribing to Celtic Stuff Live on iTunes and Stitcher. We'd love it if you gave us a rating and a review because your feedback is important to the show. For staff writer Samuel Elias, executive producer Larry H. Russell, the founder of CLNS Media, Nick Gelso, and my co-host John Duke, I'm Justin Poulin. Thank you for listening to another edition of Celtic Stuff Live.
Celtic Stuff Live.